Aliens declare war. After 6,000 years, humans respond. With laughter, the forgotten warning, the signal arrived on a Wednesday afternoon at the deep space monitoring station orbiting Neptune. Technician Sarah Kim was halfway through her coffee when her console started beeping in a pattern she had never heard before. The frequency was ancient, something from the very early days of radio technology. She frowned at her screen and ran the signal through the modern interpretation software 3 times before she believed what she was seeing. "Hey, Marcus," she called to her supervisor. "You need to see this." Marcus Chen floated over in the zero-gravity environment, his gray hair drifting around his head like a cloud. He had been working in deep space monitoring for 200 years and thought he had seen everything. He looked at Sarah's screen, and his eyes went wide. "Is that what I think it is?" he asked. "If you think it is a declaration of war from an alien species we have never heard of, then yes," Sarah replied. "The message is 6,000 years old based on the signal degradation. It was sent when humans were still building pyramids." Marcus started laughing. He laughed so hard that he had to grab onto a handhold to keep from spinning away. Sarah joined him, and soon the entire monitoring station was filled with the sound of their laughter. The idea was simply too absurd. An alien species had sent a threat to primitive humans and then apparently forgotten about it for 6 millennia. "We need to decode the full message," Marcus said, when he finally caught his breath. "And then we need to alert Captain Rodriguez. This is going to be the funniest thing that has happened in centuries." It took 3 days to fully decode the message. The aliens, who called themselves the Crethian Empire, had used a simple binary system that any species with basic mathematics could understand. When the full message finally played on screens across the Solar Defense Network, it caused quite a stir. The holographic display showed a tall, imposing figure with deep purple skin and 4 arms. Its eyes were large and silver, and it wore elaborate armor that seemed designed more for ceremony than actual combat. The creature's voice was deep and resonant, translated by AI into dozens of human languages simultaneously. "Attention, primitive inhabitants of the 3rd planet," the alien said. "I am Supreme Overlord Jathan of the Crethian Empire. Our scouts have surveyed your world and found it suitable for incorporation into our domains. You are a young species, barely capable of basic tool use. You wage war with simple weapons and live in crude shelters." The alien paused, as if expecting this information to terrify its audience. In the present day, billions of humans watched with growing amusement. We have marked your world for conquest. In 6,000 of your solar cycles, our great fleet will arrive to claim your planet. You will become subjects of the Crethian Empire. You will serve us. You will provide labor and resources. Resistance is futile. Your primitive civilization cannot possibly stand against our advanced technology. The message ended with what was presumably meant to be an intimidating image of Crethian warships. To modern human eyes, they looked like something from a museum. "Barely more advanced than Earth's own 1st generation of spacecraft, Captain." Alina Rodriguez watched the message from her office on Mars and could not stop smiling. She was 347 years old, though biological enhancement made her appear to be in her 30s. She had served in the diplomatic corps for over a century, handling everything from trade negotiations to first contact scenarios with newly discovered species, but this was something entirely new and wonderfully ridiculous. "Helen," she said to her AI assistant, "pull up historical records from 6,000 years ago. I want to see what humanity was actually doing when this message was sent." The holographic display shifted to show images of ancient Earth. Humans were indeed building pyramids. They were inventing writing systems. They were creating the first complex civilizations. They had no idea that somewhere across the galaxy, an alien species was planning to conquer them. "Now show me current human civilization," Alina said. The display changed dramatically. It showed the millions of habitats scattered across 3 star systems. It showed the massive ring structures around Earth where billions lived in comfort. It showed the terraformed worlds of Mars, Venus, and dozens of moons. It showed the asteroid mining operations that provided unlimited resources. It showed the quantum communication networks that connected every human across light years instantly. It showed the fusion reactors that provided endless clean energy. It showed the medical technology that had virtually eliminated disease and extended lifespans indefinitely. Most importantly, it showed the defense grid. Humanity had learned hard lessons from its past. They had faced extinction-level threats before and barely survived. The Cascade Crisis 300 years ago had killed billions when an AI went rogue. The Proxima conflict 200 years ago had nearly sparked a war between the inner and outer colonies. Each crisis had taught humanity to be prepared, to be vigilant, and to work together. The Solar Defense Network was the result of that learning. It consisted of thousands of automated defense platforms, each one capable of tracking and neutralizing threats at relativistic speeds. The weapons themselves were precisely calibrated to disable rather than destroy. Humanity had long ago decided that violence should always be the absolute last resort, used only when all other options failed. "Contact the Diplomatic Council," Alina said. "We need to decide how to respond to this." The emergency meeting was held in virtual space, with representatives from all major human settlements appearing as holographic avatars. There were people from Earth, Mars, the Jovian moons, the Saturn colonies, the Kuiper Belt stations, and even the distant Proxima settlement. Billions of humans lived scattered across the solar system and beyond, but they were all still one species, one family. Alina presented the Crethian message to the council. The reaction was exactly what she expected. First confusion, then disbelief, then uncontrollable laughter. A representative from the Europa colonies laughed so hard that her avatar briefly glitched. "They think we still live in mud huts," someone said between fits of laughter. "They sent this message 6,000 years ago and just forgot about us," another added. "They are probably going to be very surprised when they get here," a third voice chimed. Alina raised her hand for silence. The laughter gradually subsided, though everyone still wore broad smiles. "The question before us is simple," Alina said. "How do we respond? Our long-range sensors have detected a fleet approaching from the direction the original message came from. They will arrive in approximately 2 weeks. We need to decide what to do. We could just let them arrive and see what happens," suggested a representative from the Mars settlement. "It might be educational for them. We could send them a message warning them that things have changed," offered someone from the Titan colony. "Give them a chance to turn back before they embarrass themselves." "Or we could prepare a proper welcome," Alina said quietly. "Show them who we have become. Show them that the species they dismissed as primitive has grown into something they never imagined." The council debated for hours. Some wanted to simply ignore the Crethians. Some wanted to meet them with overwhelming military force to teach them a lesson. Some wanted to try to communicate and explain the situation before the fleet arrived. In the end, they decided on a middle path. They would let the Crethians arrive and see modern humanity for themselves. They would not use any aggressive force unless absolutely necessary. They would offer diplomacy and friendship, even though the Crethians had come offering only conquest. "We are not the species we were 6,000 years ago," Alina told the council. "We do not respond to threats with threats anymore. We respond with understanding. We respond with patience. We respond with the hope that others can learn and grow as we have learned and grown." The vote was unanimous. Alina was given full authority to handle the situation as she saw fit. She accepted the responsibility with mixed feelings. Part of her was excited about this unprecedented situation. Part of her was worried about what might happen if the Crethians refused to listen to reason. Part of her simply could not stop smiling at the absurdity of it all. Meanwhile, light years away, Supreme Commander Vexroth of the Crethian Imperial Fleet prepared for what he believed would be the easiest conquest in his species' history. He stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and looked at the star charts with satisfaction. His fleet consisted of 8,000 warships, the largest military force the Crethian Empire had assembled in generations. Vexroth was old by Crethian standards, nearly 300 solar cycles. His purple skin had faded to a lighter shade with age, and his forearms moved with careful deliberation rather than youthful energy. But his mind was still sharp, and his commitment to Crethion's superiority was absolute. He had spent his entire life in military service, rising through the ranks through skill and ruthlessness. "Navigator," he called out. "Confirm our arrival time at the target world." 14 planetary rotations, Commander, the navigator replied. "We will emerge from hyperspace at the edge of their star system as planned." Vexroth nodded with satisfaction. Everything was proceeding perfectly. The target world had been marked for conquest generations ago, back when his great-great-grandfather had been supreme overlord. The primitives living there would not even know what was happening. They would see the Crethian fleet appear in their sky and they would fall to their knees in terror. It would be glorious. "Tactical Officer," Vexroth continued, "review the intelligence reports one more time. I want to know exactly what we are dealing with." The tactical officer, a younger Crethian named Thela, pulled up the ancient data on her console. "The inhabitants are called humans, Commander. When our scouts visited their world, they were barely sentient. They lived in simple structures made of stone and mud. They used primitive metal tools. They had no understanding of advanced mathematics or physics. They could not even achieve flight." "Perfect," Vexroth said. "They will not resist. This will be a simple occupation. We will land, establish our authority, and begin integrating their world into the Empire. Perhaps some of them will even be useful as servants." Thela hesitated before speaking again. "Commander, if I may ask a question." "Speak." "The original scout report is very old. Is it not possible that these humans have advanced since then? 6,000 cycles is a long time." Vexroth turned to look at her. His silver eyes narrowed slightly. The report indicated a primitive species with limited cognitive capability. Such species do not advance quickly. Even if they have made some progress, they will still be thousands of cycles behind our technology. Your concern is noted but unnecessary." Thela lowered her head in deference. "Yes, Commander. Of course, but privately, she was not entirely convinced. She had studied the histories of conquered species, and she knew that sometimes things did not go according to plan. Sometimes primitive species surprised their conquerors. Sometimes intelligence reports were wrong. She hoped that this would not be one of those times. Back in the Sol system, Alina Rodriguez was making final preparations. She had assembled a small team of specialists, historians, to explain humanity's development, scientists to demonstrate current technology, and most importantly, cultural experts who understood how to communicate with species that valued military strength and conquest. Remember, Alina told her team during their final briefing, "These are not evil beings. They are simply operating according to the values of their own culture. They believe that strength equals worth, that conquest equals glory. Our job is to show them a different way without humiliating them or making them feel inferior." "That might be difficult," one of the historians said. "When they see how far we have advanced, they are going to feel pretty inferior no matter what we do." Lena nodded. "Which is why we need to be gentle. We need to emphasize that we once were where they are now. We need to show them that growth is possible, that change is possible, that they do not have to remain trapped in old patterns forever." She looked around at her team. They were good people, intelligent and compassionate. They represented the best of what humanity had become. If anyone could turn this potentially disastrous first contact into something positive, it was them. "Prepare the welcome station," Alina ordered. "Make it comfortable, but not too intimidating. We want them to feel safe enough to listen." As her team dispersed to carry out their assignments, Alina stood alone for a moment and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an alien fleet was approaching, expecting to find primitive humans trembling in fear. Instead, they were going to find something completely unexpected. She smiled. This was going to be interesting. The awkward arrival of the Crethian fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system with precision timing. Commander Vexroth stood proudly on his bridge, ready to witness the fear and confusion of the primitive humans. What he saw instead made his forearms go rigid with shock. "What is this?" he demanded. "What am I looking at?" The view screen showed something impossible. The star system was not empty as the old reports had suggested. It was full. Thousands of structures orbited every significant body in the system. Massive rings encircled the third planet, glowing with lights that suggested billions of inhabitants. The fourth planet had been transformed from a red desert into a green world with visible oceans. Enormous stations hung in space around the gas giants, harvesting resources on a scale Vexrath could barely comprehend. Commander Thala said quietly, "The humans appear to have advanced significantly since our last survey." "I can see that," Vexrath snapped. His mind was racing. This changed everything. This was not a primitive species waiting to be conquered. This was a civilization that had achieved wonders the Krethian Empire could only dream of. "All ships maintain formation," he ordered. "Do not show weakness. We will proceed as planned." But even as he gave the order, Vexrath felt uncertainty creeping into his mind. How had this happened? How had a species described as barely sentient achieved so much in such a short time? The reports from 6,000 cycles ago had been clear. The humans were primitives. They should not have been capable of this level of advancement. "Commander, we are being hailed," the communications officer announced. "It is a civilian vessel." "Just one ship? A civilian vessel?" Vexrath was confused. Where's their military? Where are their defense forces? "I am not detecting any military vessels in our immediate vicinity," the tactical officer reported. "But, Commander, there are thousands of structures in orbit around the third planet. Any of them could be armed." The single civilian ship approached the Krethian fleet without any apparent concern. It was small, sleek, and moved with a grace that made the Krethian warships look clumsy by comparison. Vexrath watched it dance between his vessels, completely unafraid. "Open communications," he ordered. The view screen changed to show the interior of the human ship. A young human male sat in the pilot's seat, holding some kind of recording device. He had dark hair, brown skin, and eyes that sparkled with amusement. He waved at the camera. "Hey everyone, this is Jake Martinez coming to you live from the edge of the Sol system," the human said cheerfully. "You are not going to believe what I found out here. Remember those aliens that sent us a threatening message 6,000 years ago? Well, they actually showed up." Vexrath stared at the screen in confusion. Was this human broadcasting to others? Was he not afraid? "So I am here with the Krethian fleet," Jake continued, apparently talking to an unseen audience. "They have like 8,000 ships, which is pretty impressive, I guess. They look kind of old-fashioned, though. Like retro aesthetic. Very vintage space opera vibes." Silence. Vexrath roared. "I am Supreme Commander Vexrath of the Krethian Imperial Fleet. We have come to claim your world. You will surrender immediately or face destruction." Jake looked directly at the camera and grinned. "Did you hear that? He wants us to surrender. That is adorable." Vexrath felt his face flush darker purple with anger. "You dare mock me? We have 8,000 warships. We can destroy your entire civilization." Okay, hold on," Jake said, still smiling. "Let me patch you through to someone official. I am just a streamer. I do not actually work for the government. But this has been amazing content. My viewers are going to love this." The screen flickered and changed. Jake's cheerful face was replaced by a professional interface showing a distinguished-looking human woman. She had dark hair pulled back neatly, warm brown eyes, and an expression of calm confidence. She wore simple clothing with a small insignia that Vexrath did not recognize. "Good morning, Commander Vexrath," the woman said politely. "My name is Captain Alina Rodriguez. I am a diplomatic representative for the United Human Settlements. Welcome to our star system. I apologize for the informal first contact." Jake is enthusiastic, but not exactly protocol conscious. Vexrath tried to regain his composure. "This is not a social visit. We have come to conquer your species. You will surrender your worlds and submit to Krethian authority." Alina nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, we received your message. The one you sent 6,000 years ago. I have to say we were quite surprised when it finally arrived. We had no idea you were coming." "Then you understand the situation," Vexrath said. "You cannot resist. Submit now, and we will be merciful." "Commander, I think there may have been a miscommunication," Elena said gently. "You see, the information you have about humanity is somewhat out of date. Things have changed quite a bit since your scouts last visited Earth. I can see that you have built structures, Vexroth admitted. But structures are not weapons. You may have advanced, but you still cannot match the military might of the Crethian Empire. Lena's expression became sympathetic. Commander, before this goes any further, would you be willing to meet with me in person? I think we need to have a longer conversation. There are some things you should know. I do not negotiate with primitives, Vexroth said coldly. I understand, Elena replied. But consider this. Your fleet has been traveling for a long time. Your crew must be tired. Why not rest for a moment and talk? We have prepared a neutral meeting space. No weapons, no tricks, just conversation. If after talking, you still want to proceed with hostilities, well, at least we will have tried. Vexroth hesitated. Every instinct told him to refuse, to maintain his position of strength. But something in Elena's calm demeanor unsettled him. She did not seem afraid. She did not seem concerned. She spoke to him the way one might speak to a confused child. Very well, he finally said. I will meet with you. But know that this changes nothing. The Crethian Empire does not show weakness. I understand, Elena said. Transmitting coordinates now. Come alone or bring your entire command staff. Whatever makes you comfortable. We will be waiting. The transmission ended. Vexroth stood on his bridge, feeling more uncertain than he had in decades. Thala approached him carefully. Commander, is this wise? This could be a trap. Of course it could be a trap, Vexroth replied. But I need to see these humans up close. I need to understand what we are dealing with. Prepare a shuttle. You will accompany me along with a security detail. Within an hour, Vexroth's shuttle was approaching the coordinates Elena had provided. They found a small station floating in space, newly constructed and obviously created specifically for this meeting. It had large windows, comfortable-looking furniture visible inside, no apparent weapon systems. As they docked, Vexroth noticed something strange. His security scanners were unable to properly analyze the station's technology. The materials it was built from did not match anything in the Crethian database. The power source was completely unknown. Even the docking mechanism operated on principles his engineers could not explain. They entered the station through an airlock that adjusted itself automatically to accommodate Crethian biology. Inside, Elena Rodriguez stood waiting with two other humans. The room was filled with comfortable seating, holographic displays that floated in the air, and a table laden with food and drink. Welcome, Commander, Elena said warmly. Please make yourself comfortable. Can I offer you refreshments? We took the liberty of researching Crethian biology and prepared some items that should be compatible with your digestive system. Vexroth looked around warily. His security team fanned out, checking for threats. Thala stayed close beside him, her silver eyes taking in every detail. I am not here to eat, Vexroth said. I am here to discuss your surrender. Of course, Elena replied patiently. She gestured to a large, comfortable seat that seemed designed specifically for Crethian anatomy. But perhaps we could sit while we discuss it. Standing for long periods can be tiring. Reluctantly, Vexroth sat. The chair adjusted itself to his body, providing perfect support. Despite himself, he felt his muscles relax slightly after the long journey. Elena sat across from him and activated a holographic display. Commander, before we continue, I think you should see something. This is Earth 6,000 years ago when your scouts visited. The hologram showed images of ancient Earth, humans building primitive structures, farmers working fields with simple tools, warriors fighting with bronze weapons. It matched everything the Crethian records had described, yes, Vexroth said. This is what we expected to find, primitives. Now let me show you what happened next, Elena said. The hologram began to move forward in time. Humans developed writing, mathematics, astronomy. They built great cities and empires. They created art and philosophy. They invented new technologies at an ever-increasing pace. Then came the Industrial Revolution. Machines replaced manual labor. Science advanced exponentially. Within a few centuries, humans went from sailing ships to spacecraft. We nearly destroyed ourselves several times, Alina narrated quietly. We fought terrible wars. We damaged our planet. We created weapons that could kill billions. We came very close to extinction more than once. The hologram showed mushroom clouds, cities in ruins, environmental collapse. Vexroth watched with growing interest. This was something he understood. Conflict, destruction, the struggle for dominance. But something changed, Alina continued. We learned. We grew. We decided to become something better. The hologram showed humanity's expansion into space, the colonization of Mars, the construction of orbital habitats, the development of technologies that seemed like magic, medical advances that eliminated disease, energy systems that provided unlimited power without harming anything, communication networks that connected everyone instantly across vast distances. This is humanity today, Alina said. We are 30 trillion individuals spread across multiple star systems. We have eliminated poverty, hunger, and most diseases. We have extended our lifespans indefinitely. We have created artificial intelligences that work alongside us as partners. We have transformed ourselves from the primitives your scouts observed into something very different. Vexroth stared at the hologram. His mind was reeling. This is impossible. No species advances this quickly. It took the Crethian Empire 10,000 cycles to achieve space travel. You did it in less than 1,000? Humanity has always been quick learners, Alina said gently. Sometimes too quick for our own good? But yes, we advance rapidly. Faster than most species in the galaxy, from what we understand. She manipulated the hologram again, showing something new. Vexroth saw defense systems that made his fleet look like antiques. He saw energy weapons that could disintegrate matter at the molecular level. He saw shields that could withstand star-level temperatures. He saw ships that moved faster than anything in Crethian technology. Commander, I am showing you this not to threaten you, but to help you understand the situation, Alina said seriously. Your fleet cannot conquer humanity. If you attack us, our automated defense systems will disable your ships without any human even needing to make a decision. You will not die. We have designed our defenses specifically to avoid casualties, but you will be stopped. Vexroth felt something cold settling in his stomach. You are saying we cannot win. I am saying that combat is not necessary, Alina replied. We do not want to fight you. We do not want to humiliate you. We want to talk with you, to learn about you, to share what we have learned. The universe is vast enough for all of us. Thela spoke for the first time. Why? Why show us mercy? If your technology is so advanced, you could destroy us easily. Why do you not simply eliminate a potential threat? Alina looked at her with surprise, and something that might have been respect. That is an excellent question. The answer is that we remember what it was like to be where you are now. We remember being aggressive, territorial, convinced that strength was the only thing that mattered. We nearly destroyed ourselves because of that thinking. We learned better. And now we try to help others learn better too. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the stars. Every species develops at its own pace. There is no shame in being behind. There is only shame in refusing to learn and grow. You came here expecting to find primitives. Instead, you found teachers. The question is whether you are willing to be students. Vexroth was silent for a long time. Everything he believed in, everything he had been taught since hatching, told him to reject this offer. The Crethian way was conquest. The Crethian way was dominance. To accept help from another species was to admit weakness. But he was also pragmatic. He had not survived 300 cycles by being foolish. If what Alina said was true, if humanity truly possessed the technology she claimed, then his fleet was in grave danger. His entire species could be at risk. What exactly are you proposing? He finally asked. Alina turned back to face him, and her expression was hopeful. A cultural exchange. You teach us about your people, your history, your way of thinking. We teach you about ours. We share technology, medicine, scientific knowledge. We help your species advance just as we have advanced. And in return, you help us understand perspectives we may have lost along the way. And if I refuse, then we politely escort your fleet back to the edge of our star system and ask you to leave, Alina said. We will not harm you unless you force us to, but you will return home with nothing. No conquest. No glory. Just a story about the species that could have destroyed you, but chose not to. Vexorith looked at Thala. She met his gaze steadily. He could see that she was thinking the same thing he was. This was not what they had expected. This was not what they had prepared for. But perhaps, just perhaps, it was an opportunity they could not afford to miss. I need to consult with my officers, Vexorith said. And with the Crethian High Council? This decision is too important for me to make alone, Corsalina said. Take all the time you need. We are not going anywhere. In the meantime, would you like a tour? I could show you some of our facilities, introduce you to some of our people. Seeing is often more convincing than words. Vexorith hesitated, then nodded slowly. A tour, yes. I would like to see more of what you have achieved. Lena smiled. Wonderful. And please, try some of the refreshments. They really are quite good. We may be advanced, but we still appreciate good food. Despite himself, Vexorith reached for one of the items on the table. It was some kind of baked good, sweet and soft. He bit into it cautiously, and flavor exploded across his tongue. It was delicious. This is called a cookie, Alina explained. An ancient human recipe. We have been baking them for thousands of years. Some things are too good to improve upon. As Vexorith ate his cookie and prepared for the tour, he realized that everything had changed. He had come here as a conqueror. Now he was not sure what he was. But for the first time in his long military career, he felt something unexpected. He felt curious, and that curiosity might just save his entire species. The new alliance 2 weeks had passed since the Crathian fleet arrived in the Sol system. Commander Vexroth sat in Alina Rodriguez's office on the Mars orbital station and tried to process everything he had seen. The tour Alina promised had been overwhelming in ways he could never have imagined. They had shown him hospitals where humans healed. Injuries that would have been fatal by Crethian standards. They had taken him to schools where children learned subjects that Crethian scientists spent lifetimes studying. They had brought him to manufacturing facilities where machines created complex devices without any biological workers at all. They had introduced him to artificial intelligences that thought and reasoned and joked like living beings. Most disturbing of all, they had shown him their military capabilities. Not to threaten him, but to be honest. They had demonstrated weapons that could disable his entire fleet in minutes without harming a single Crethian. They had shown him shields that could withstand the combined firepower of every weapon his species had ever created. They had explained defense systems so advanced that the Crethian Empire would need 1,000 years just to understand the basic principles, and through it all, the humans had been unfailingly kind. They had treated him and his officers not as enemies, but as honored guests. They had answered every question honestly. They had shared meals and stories. They had laughed at themselves and invited the Crethians to laugh with them. It was disorienting, Commander Alina said gently, pulling him from his thoughts. You have been very quiet today. What are you thinking about? Vexroth looked at her with his large silver eyes. I am thinking that I have made a terrible mistake. I brought my fleet here expecting conquest. Instead, I have discovered that my entire species is living in the past, while the rest of the universe has moved forward without us. That is not entirely true, Alina replied. The Crethian Empire has survived for thousands of years. That requires skill, adaptation, and intelligence. You are not failures. You are simply at a different stage of development, stage thousands of cycles behind yours. Yes, Alina admitted, but that does not make you inferior. It makes you younger. Every civilization goes through stages. We have moved through some of them faster than most, partly out of necessity and partly through luck. You are where you are, and that is okay. Grethroth appreciated her kindness, but it did not ease the weight of his realization. He thought about the Crethian High Council back on the home world. He thought about the millions of Crethians who believed in their empire's superiority. He thought about the honor-based culture that had defined his species for millennia. How could he tell them that everything they believed was wrong? A chime sounded in the office. Alina glanced at her display. Commander, your sub-commander Thala is requesting an urgent meeting. May I send her in? Vexareth nodded. Thala entered the office quickly, her forearms moving in the Crethian gesture of respect, but there was excitement in her silver eyes. Commander, I apologize for the interruption, Thala said, but there is something you need to see. Something several of our crew members have experienced.
What is it?
Vexaroth asked. Medical treatment, Commander. I know you witnessed their hospital capabilities during the tour, but some of our crew have been experiencing various health issues, and the humans offered to help. The results are extraordinary. She manipulated a data device, projecting information into the air. Crew member Zixtal had a degenerative condition affecting his secondary nervous system. By Crethian medical standards, he would have been disabled within a year. The humans treated him in 3 hours. He is now completely healed. More data appeared. Engineer Keshfor had chronic pain from an old injury, something we considered untreatable. The humans fixed it in minutes. Navigator Rilvex was losing vision in 2 of his eyes. The humans restored it completely. Thala looked directly at Vexareth. Commander, they're healing our people. Not for payment. Not for strategic advantage. Just because they can. Because they believe no one should suffer needlessly. Vexareth felt something shift inside him. He thought about the Crethian medical system, limited and often ineffective. He thought about all the soldiers who had suffered from injuries that never fully healed. He thought about the officers who had died from conditions that could have been prevented. How many of our crew have received treatment? He asked quietly. 47 so far, Thala replied. And the number is growing as word spreads. The humans have set up a medical facility on one of their stations specifically for us. They are offering screenings to everyone in our fleet, free of charge, Alina spoke from her desk. Commander, we are not trying to buy your loyalty with medical care. We are simply doing what we believe is right. Your crew members were suffering. We could help. So we did. Vexaroth stood and walked to the window. Outside, he could see his fleet. Thousands of warships hanging in space. They had come here ready for battle. Now they were floating peacefully while human medical teams healed injuries and cured diseases. It was not what he had planned. It was not what any military commander would have planned, but it was happening. I need to speak with the High Council, he said finally. This situation has gone beyond my authority to manage alone. The Council must decide how the Crethian Empire will respond to everything we have learned here. Of course, Alina said. Would you like to use our quantum communication system? It will allow you to speak with your homeworld in real time despite the distance. Vexareth turned to look at her. You would give us access to that technology? For a communication? Yes. We trust you, Commander. You came here with hostile intentions, but you have been willing to listen and learn. That shows wisdom. We believe in rewarding wisdom. The communication with the Crethian High Council took place in a secure chamber Alina provided. Vexaroth stood before a holographic projection that showed the 7 members of the council, seated on their thrones in the grand chamber on the Crethian homeworld. Their purple faces were stern and expectant. Supreme Commander Vexrath, High Chancellor Morseth said in a deep voice, "We have received scattered reports from your fleet, reports that do not make sense. Explain the situation clearly." Vexareth took a breath and told them everything. He described the advanced human civilization. He explained the technological gap between species. He detailed the humans' military capabilities and their consistent refusal to use them aggressively. He mentioned the medical treatments being offered freely to Crethian crew members. The council listened in growing disbelief. When Vexarath finished, there was a long silence. "You are telling us, Counselor Vixian," said slowly, "that the primitives we intended to conquer are actually more advanced than we are by thousands of years?" "Yes, Counselor." "That they could destroy our entire fleet without effort?" "Yes, Counselor." "And instead of destroying us, they are offering friendship and technological assistance?" "Yes, Counselor." Another silence. Then High Chancellor Morseth spoke again. "This is unprecedented. The Crethian Empire has existed for over 12,000 cycles. We have conquered 73 worlds. We have never encountered a species that responded to our military might with compassion. The humans are not like other species, Vexrith said. They have transcended many of the limitations that still bind us. They have technologies we cannot comprehend. But more importantly, they have wisdom we lack. They understand things about cooperation and growth that we are only beginning to grasp. Counselor Thextran, the eldest member, leaned forward. What are you proposing, Commander? That we abandon our traditions? That we become weak, like these humans? The humans are not weak, Vexrith said firmly. They are the strongest species I have ever encountered. But their strength is not in their weapons. It is in their ability to adapt, to learn, to work together across vast differences. They nearly destroyed themselves multiple times, yet they survived and grew stronger. That is true strength. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. I propose that we accept the humans' offer. Let them teach us. Let us learn from their mistakes and their successes. The universe is changing, and if we do not change with it, we will be left behind. Or worse, we will eventually encounter a species that is not as merciful as humanity. The council debated among themselves for several minutes. Vexeroth waited, feeling his heart beating rapidly. Everything he believed in, everything his species believed in, hung in the balance. Finally, High Chancellor Morseth spoke. We will take your recommendation under advisement, Commander. But understand that this decision will reshape our entire civilization. It will require changing traditions that have existed for millennia. Many Krethians will resist. I understand, Vexrith said. But I believe it is necessary. I have seen what humanity has achieved. I have seen what we could become with their help. It is worth the struggle. The communication ended. Vexeroth stood alone in the chamber, uncertain about what would happen next. But he had done what he could. He had told the truth. Now, it was up to his leaders to decide what to do with that truth. 3 days later, the decision came. The Krethian High Council voted to accept humanity's offer of cooperation. It was not unanimous, but it was decisive. The Krethian Empire would begin the long, difficult process of transforming itself from a conquest-based civilization into something. Alina organized a celebration to mark the beginning of the alliance. She held it on Earth itself, in a beautiful park in what had once been called New Zealand. Humans and Krethians mingled together, sharing food and conversation. Children of both species played together, their differences forgotten in the simple joy of games and laughter. Vexrath walked through the park with Thela beside him. He watched a group of young Krethians learning a human sport called soccer from a group of human teenagers. The Krethians were struggling with the concept of working together as a team rather than trying to dominate individually. But they were learning. This is strange, Thela said quietly. A week ago, we were enemies. Now, we are guests. Now we are students, as Vexroth agreed. It is strange, but perhaps strange is what we needed. Alina approached them with 2 other humans. One was an elderly man with white hair and kind eyes. The other was a young woman with the same enthusiasm Vexerith had seen in the live streamer Jake Martinez. Commander, I would like you to meet some people, Alina said. This is Dr. James Okonkwo. He is one of our leading experts on cultural transformation. He has helped several newly contacted species adapt to interaction with broader galactic civilization. The elderly human extended his hand in the human gesture of greeting. Vexroth had learned to recognize it and reached out one of his 4 arms to clasp the human's hand. Commander, it is an honor to meet you, Dr. Okonkwo said. What you are doing requires great courage. Changing an entire culture's fundamental beliefs is one of the hardest things any civilization can attempt. I am beginning to understand that, Vexworth replied. Already I've received messages from some Krethian military leaders questioning my loyalty. They believe I have been corrupted by human influence. That is a normal response to rapid change, the doctor said. But if I may offer some advice, focus on the young. The older generation may never fully accept the new way of thinking. But the children, the ones who grow up with both Krethian and human influences, they will be the bridge between cultures. Vexra thought about the young Krethians he had seen playing soccer. They were laughing and cooperating in ways that would have been unthinkable to their ancestors. Perhaps the doctor was right. Alina introduced the young woman next. And this is Dr. Sarah Kim. She is the technician who first detected your message. In a way, she started this whole situation. Sarah smiled brightly. Hi, Commander. I have to say, when I first decoded that message, I never imagined it would lead to this. I thought it was going to be a funny historical curiosity. Instead, it became the beginning of an alliance. Life is full of surprises, Vexrith said. He was learning to appreciate human humor. Although I wish the surprise had not revealed how far behind my species truly is. You are not behind, Sarah said seriously. You are just on a different path. Every species develops uniquely. The fact that humans advance quickly does not make you slow. It makes us unusual. They talked for a while longer, discussing plans for the cultural exchange program. Crethian students would come to human worlds to learn science, medicine, engineering, and philosophy. Human teachers would visit Crethian worlds to understand their perspective and help facilitate the transition. It would take generations to fully integrate the new knowledge into Crethian society. But everyone agreed it was worth the effort, as the sun began to set over the park. Vexrith found himself standing alone on a hillside, looking out at the gathered crowd of humans and Crethians. Thala joined him quietly. What are you thinking, Commander? She asked. I am thinking about pride, Vexrith replied. I came here full of pride in the Crethian Empire, pride in our military might, pride in our superiority. That pride almost led me to make the worst mistake of my life. He was quiet for a moment. The humans have shown me a different kind of pride. Pride in growth. Pride in overcoming limitations. Pride in helping others rather than dominating them. I think that is the kind of pride worth having, Thala nodded. I have been talking with some of the human soldiers, the ones who fought in their great wars. They say that their species almost destroyed itself because of pride. They learned to let go of it in order to survive. Perhaps that is the lesson we need to learn as well. Perhaps Vexroth agreed. Alina approached them, carrying 3 cups of a warm human beverage called tea. She offered one to each of them. I wanted to thank you, Commander, she said. You could have refused to listen. You could have attacked us despite knowing you would lose. You could have retreated and reported us as enemies. Instead, you chose to learn. That takes a special kind of strength. Vexroth accepted the tea and sipped it carefully. It was pleasant, warming him from the inside. I chose survival, he said. For myself and my species, the humans have a saying, I have learned. Adapt or die. I chose to adapt. That is all any of us can do, Alina replied. The universe changes constantly. Species that refuse to change with it eventually disappear. But species that embrace change, that learn from others, that grow beyond their limitations, those species thrive. They stood together on the hillside as darkness fell and the stars began to appear. Vexroth looked up at the night sky and thought about all the worlds out there. All the species struggling to survive and grow. He thought about the Crethian Empire and the long journey of transformation ahead. It would not be easy. There would be resistance and conflict. There would be Crethians who refused to accept the new way. There would be setbacks and failures. But there would also be progress. There would be Crethian children who grew up learning from humans. There would be innovations born from combining 2 different perspectives. There would be a future better than anything his ancestors had imagined. 2 new beginnings, Alina said. Raising her cup, to new beginnings, Vexrith and Thala repeated. Raising their own cups, they drank together under the stars, 3 beings from 2 different species, united in hope for a better future. 5 years later, Epilogue the Memorial stood in the center of Unity Plaza on Crethia Prime. It was a simple structure, made jointly by Crethian and human artisans. 2 figures stood side by side, one Crethian and one human, reaching out to each other in friendship. At the base was an inscription in both languages. The day we came for conquest and found compassion instead. Former Supreme Commander Vexroth, now Ambassador Vexereth of the Crethian Republic, stood before the memorial with his old friend, Alina Rodriguez. 5 years had changed everything. The Crethian Empire had dissolved peacefully. replaced by a democratic republic modeled after human systems but adapted to Crethian culture. The old military hierarchies had been restructured into civil services focused on exploration and development rather than conquest. How many Crethian students are currently in human institutions? Alina asked. Over 3 million, Vexaroth replied with pride. And we have 2 million humans living on Crethian worlds, teaching and learning alongside us. The cultural integration is proceeding faster than anyone predicted. Not everyone is happy about it, Alina noted. There are still resistance groups. Old military commanders who refuse to accept the changes, traditionalists who believe we have abandoned our heritage, but they are a shrinking minority. Most Crethians, especially the younger generation, embrace the new way. A group of mixed-species children ran past them, playing some hybrid game that combined elements of human and Crethian sports. They were laughing and shouting in a mixture of both languages. That is the future, Vexarith said, watching them. Children who do not see species differences as barriers, who are comfortable with both cultures. They will do things we cannot even imagine. Thala, now serving as deputy ambassador, joined them. She had spent the last 3 years studying on Earth and had become one of the strongest advocates for integration. The joint exploration mission is ready to launch, she announced. 3 human ships and 3 Crethian ships, heading out to survey the spiral arm sectors we discussed. If we find any new civilizations, we will make contact together as equal partners. Perfect, Alina said. That is exactly the kind of cooperation we hope to build. Vexroth looked at the memorial again. He thought about the day his fleet had arrived in the Sol system, full of arrogance and certainty. He had been so sure of his purpose, so confident in his understanding of the universe. How wrong he had been, sometimes wonder, he said quietly. What would have happened if we had arrived and found humanity still in their primitive state? If they had been as defenseless as we expected, we would have conquered them, Elena said simply, and both our species would have been poorer for it. You would have gained slaves, but you would have lost the opportunity to become something better. Yes, Vexarith agreed. We would have won a battle and lost everything that truly matters. A human child approached them, holding a drawing. She looked up at Vexarith with curious eyes. Are you the alien commander from the stories? She asked. I am, Vexaroth replied gently. Though I am no longer a commander. Now I am just an old Crethian trying to learn from humans. My teacher says you are a hero, the child said. She says you were brave enough to change your mind when you learned you were wrong. Vexarith felt his throat tighten with emotion. Your teacher is very kind. But the real heroes are the humans who showed mercy when they could have shown strength. The child handed him the drawing. It showed a Crethian and a human holding hands under a rainbow. I made this for you. My mom says we should always remember the day the Crethians came, and we became friends instead of enemies. Thank you, Vexarith said, accepting the drawing carefully. I will treasure this. The child ran off to join her friends. Vexarith looked at the simple drawing and felt something he had never experienced in his long life. He felt at peace. You were right, he said to Alina. That day in your office, when you told me that every species deserves a chance to grow. I did not believe you then, but I believe you now, Alina smiled. We were all right. You were right to listen instead of fighting. Your council was right to accept change. The young Crethians were right to embrace new ideas. Growth is not something one person or one species does alone. It is something we do together. They stood in silence for a while, watching the mixed crowds moving through Unity Plaza. Humans and Crethians working together, learning together, building a future together. It was not perfect. There were still conflicts and misunderstandings, but it was better than what came before, far above them. In orbit around Crethia Prime, the joint exploration fleet was preparing to launch. Human and Crethian crews working side by side, about to venture out into the unknown together. They would find new worlds, encounter new species, face new challenges, but they would do it as allies, as friends, as partners in the great adventure of discovering what lay beyond. And if they encountered any species planning conquest, any civilization still trapped in old patterns of domination and violence, They would offer them the same thing humanity had offered the Crethians 5 years ago: a chance to laugh at themselves, a chance to change, a chance to become something better, because that was what the universe needed. Not more conquerors, not more warriors, but more species willing to grow, to learn, to extend hands in friendship rather than raising weapons in anger. The exploration fleet launched into the night sky, its engines leaving trails of light across the darkness. Vexreth watched it go and felt hope for the future. "To new beginnings," he said quietly. "Always," Elena replied, "and somewhere across the galaxy, another species was receiving a very old message, sent long ago, threatening conquest. Somewhere, someone was laughing at the absurdity of it all. And somewhere, in the infinite possibilities of the cosmos, more friendships were waiting to be born from what could have been battles. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and two species, once destined to be enemies, were learning to explore it together.